We're starting towards the bottom of Kuf Chaf Amud Beis, HaPigul v'Hanaisa, 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud. This goes back to the Mishnah, where it said that Chachamim will geyser that any pigul or any naisa is metames hayadayim, it makes you tummy. So here the Gemara will explain what's the reason Chachamim will geyser such a thing, that when you touch something which is pigul or naisa, you should become tummy. Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda. So this is an argument between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. This is Chazara actually. We had this in the Gemara before. Where was it? Which daf? It was before on daf Pei Hey. So Chad Amar, one of them says the reason is Mishum Chajdei Kahuna, because we are suspicious about the Kayanim of making things pigul. As the Gemara will explain, Chajdei Kahuna refers to pigul. V'Chad Amar Mishum Atzlei Kahuna. Another one of them said that we're concerned about the Kayanim being lazy, which relates to nicer. They're not going to eat the meat that they have to for the karbanis. They have a lot of meat to eat. So the Gemara will say right here that they're not really arguing. That each one is talking about another Inyan. Chad Amar, now there was another machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. One of them said, kezayis, that the tumah, the gzeira of the tumah, it's only if the size is a kezayis. Chad Amar, the other said, kebeitze, has to be a larger size, has to be the size of a kebeitze in order for the gzeira of tumah to take effect. So the Gemara explains, Chad Tani, a pigul. When they were arguing about whether we're suspicious about the Kayanim or worried about the Kayanim being lazy, it's the machlokes over here that they're not really arguing. One was speaking about pigul. Chad Tani, a pigul, regarding pigul, what are we concerned about? That a Kayin, for whatever reason, might want to make this carbon puzzle. If he has something with this Yid that brought a carbon, so a very easy way for him to get back at him is to make the carbon pigul, and then he'll have to bring another carbon. Or as Rashi over here says, that when it comes to the carbon shlamim, if he's bringing a carbon shlamim, Kayanim gets much less from the meat to eat from the carbon shlamim. But if he brings it as a chatas, he gets much more. So we're afraid that the Kayin might be thinking that he wants it to be a chatas instead of a shlamim, that'll have more to eat. So therefore they were geyser that it should become tamei. So therefore if a Kayin will touch it, it'll become tamei. So this will be a deterrent for him not to have such kind of a machshava. And the Chatani, and the other opinion was a Naisar, regarding the why Chachamim made the Gzeira for Naisar. Kainim have a lot of meat to eat every day, and it's a big work to make sure to finish all your meat at the right time. So they made the Gzeira that if you don't eat all your meat, it becomes Tameh. So that refers to Naisar. Man de Tanya Pigul Mishum Chajdei Kahuna. The one that was speaking about Pigul, so he said the reason of Chajdei Kahuna, that we're suspicious about the Kayanim having the wrong thoughts and making it puzzle. Man de Tanya Naisa Mishum Atzlei Kahuna. The one that was speaking about Naisa he's the one that said that the Kayanim are lazy, that they might not finish all their meat. Then we had the machlokes. So here this is a machlokes. Chadama kezayis v'chadama kebeitze. One says the size is a kezayis for it to be tameh, and the other one says that the size is a kebeitze. Mandama kezayis, the one that says that the shear is a kezayis ki isurai, like the isser of pigul or naisar. How large does the meat have to be that the isser applies? That you're not allowed to eat from pigul and naisar. The shear by all isurim is a kezayis. So over here as well, the shear of the isser of eating pigul or naisar is a kezayis. So the tumah that Chachamim or geyser is the same as the isser. Mandama kebeitze, the one that says that the shear is a kebeitze, ketumasai. It's like the halachas of tumah. The halacha by tumah is all tumas eichlin. The shear is a kebeitze. So same over here. This gzeira of Chazal regarding this tumah is also for a kebeitze. So here there is the machlokes when you get to the size. Zog the Mishnah, the very last Mishnah of Masechta Pesachim. So this is a halacha when you get to the bracha that you make on the carbon that you bring, the carbon Pesach, and together with the carbon Pesach, they also brought a carbon Chagiga. As we learned earlier when it spoke about the halachas of carbon Pesach, that since the carbon Pesach is supposed to be eaten ala soiva, you have to be full when you eat the carbon Pesach, so that if you have a large group of people and you're getting a very small portion of the carbon Pesach, you could be getting just a kazayas of carbon Pesach, so you have to have a carbon Chagiga as well, to have more meat to eat in order to be full. So there's 2 karbanas you have here, the Chagiga and the Pesach. Birech birchas ha-Pesach. You made the bracha on the carbon Pesach. The bracha sheketshana b'mitzayse v'tzivano al achilas ha-Pesach. Patar es shel zevach. That bracha will pater the bracha that you have to make on the Chagiga that you eat. Birech es shel zevach. If you made the bracha of the Chagiga, then loy patar es shel Pesach. So that will not pater the bracha that you have to make on the carbon Pesach. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. This is Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Akiva says, Loi zu petere zu, v'loi zu petere zu. Each one has a different bracha. On the Chagigi, you make the bracha Asher K'chanim Tzoysev Sivano al Achilas Zevach, and on the Pesach al Achilas Pesach. It's two separate brachas. One does not pater the other. On the other hand, Rabbi Shmuel, however, says that the Pesach, the bracha on the Pesach paters the bracha on the Chagige, but the bracha shel Zevach does not pater the Pesach. So what's the pshat of this machlekes? The Gemara explains, Keshetim tzi loima. If you'll analyze this subject, so then you'll see that their machlekes is based on the following. L'divrei Rabbi Shmuel. The basis of Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is as follows: Zrike b'chlal shviche. So now the Rashbami brings the background of this Gemara. The Gemara here is very bekitzer. Zrike b'chlal shviche means there are two different ways how you could put the blood on the mizbeach. One is zrike. There's more space to sit there at the table. One is zrike and one is shviche. Zrike, as the Rashbam says in the last line over here, is when you sprinkle the blood from a distance. That's the taich of zrika. What does shvicha mean? Shvicha is when you pour it, you're right there near the mizbeach, you're not sprinkling it from a distance, you pour it right down on the mizbeach. That's what shvicha means. So now the question is, most karbanis, the way the blood is sprinkled on the mizbeach is from a distance, what's called zrika. Carbon Pesach, which is learned out from the carbon of a b'chayr, is done through shvicha. We say it every morning, shayfech. There's one shvicha that you pour it on the mizbeach. So the question is, what happens if it comes to a carbon which was supposed to be done b'zrika, and instead of doing it b'zrika, you did it b'shvicha. You just poured the blood on the mizbeach. B'diavad, is that good? Are you yaitze putting the blood on the mizbeach even though you didn't do it with zrika? So Rabbi Shmuel says, Zrike b'chlal shviche. That a carbon that should have been done with zrike, and you did it by just pouring it on the mizbeach, it's okay. B'diavad, that's good enough. But on the other hand, v'loi shviche b'chlal zrike. A carbon where the blood is supposed to be poured on the mizbeach, and instead of pouring it, you sprinkled it, you sprayed it from a distance, it's not included. Then b'diavad, it doesn't work. It does not take effect. So what's the Gemara saying over here? So when you get to the Zevach and the Pesach, so the Zevach, the carbon Chagige, the blood is usually done with a Zrike. It's sprinkled on the Mizbeach. With the carbon Pesach, the blood is usually done b'shviche. You pour it on the Mizbeach. So therefore, the bracha that you make on the carbon Pesach will pater the Zevach as well, because the Zevach, if it's done with shvicha, like the carbon Pesach, it's good, you're yaitze. So therefore, the bracha that you make on the carbon Pesach could go on the Pesach and on the Chagige. Because the carbon Chagigi, even if it's done like the carbon Pesach b'shviche, it's the same. You yaitze, it's good. On the other hand, if you make the bracha on the carbon and the Chagige, that can't pater the carbon Pesach. Because the carbon Pesach, the blood has to be placed on the mizbeach dafke b'shviche, not b'zrike. So it's done in a different way. So the bracha of the carbon Chagige will not be able to pater the carbon Pesach. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. The Divrei Rabbi Akiva, however, Rabbi Akiva's opinion is Loi shviche b'chlal zrike, v'loi zrike b'chlal shviche. The blood that has to be poured has to be poured. The blood that has to be sprayed from a distance has to be sprayed from a distance. They can't pater each other. They're different, and because they're different, so the bracha on each carbon is separate, and you have to make a separate bracha on each one. They can't pater each other. That's the pshat in the Gemara here, according to our girsa in the Gemara. But there is another girsa in this Gemara. Taisvis over here brings from Rab Chaim Kayin. Towards the end of Taisvis, he says that there's another girsa in this Gemara that Rabbi Shmuel says that zrike b'chlal shviche and shviche b'chlal zrike. That really it goes both ways. If you pour it, it's okay. If you spray it from a distance, it's okay. Either way, it's fine. Makes no difference. That's what Rabbi Shmuel holds. So what's Rabbi Shmuel really saying? So Rab Chaim Kayin says a completely different pshat, an original pshat, which makes sense if you think about what the carbon Chagiga and carbon Pesach is. Which one is the Iker that you're bringing on Erev Pesach? A carbon Chagiga? No. The carbon Pesach is the main carbon. The carbon Chagiga is tofel. It's secondary. In order to have the mitzvah properly done to eat ala soiva, so you have to have the carbon Chagiga as well. But the main carbon is the carbon Pesach. So what's the halacha b'neged to all brachas? If you have a tafel and an iker, if you make the bracha on the iker, it's maitzi the tafel. Right? That's the whole concept of washing on bread, which is the iker of the suda, and it's maitzi the tafel. You don't have to make a bracha on anything else. So the same thing over here, what Rabbi Shmuel is saying is, if you made a bracha on the Korban Pesach, that will pater the bracha on the Chagiga as well, because the Pesach is the Iker and the Chagiga is Tafel. If you make the bracha on the Chagiga, that can't pater the Korban Pesach, because the Chagiga is the Tafel. How could a bracha on a Tafel pater the Iker, which is the Korban Pesach? That's the Taich of the Gemara that Rab Chaim Kohen says. So according to his pshat, what the Gemara is saying is, as far as the Zrika and the Shvicha is concerned, they're the same. There's no issue whatsoever. What's the reason why there's a chilik between them? Because you have to look at what's the Iker and what's the Tafel. That's Rab Chaim Kohen's pshat. So the Rebbe, in one of the Hadranim, there's two Hadranim from the Rebbe on Masechta Pesachim, and one of the Hadranim, which the Rebbe said in Shnas HaShivim, Tavshin Lamed Beis. So the Rebbe then said, Nusa, if this is the pshat, so then why does Rabbi Akiva argue? Rabbi Akiva says that they can't pater each other. The Pesach can't pater the Chagiga, and the bracha of the Chagiga can't pater the Pesach. This is always the halacha. The Iker paters the Tafel, and the Tafel does not pater the Iker. Rabbi Shmuel's opinion makes a lot of sense. What's the reason for Rabbi Akiva to argue? And we paskin like Rabbi Akiva, not like Rabbi Shmuel. The Rambam paskins like Rabbi Akiva. So what's the pshat? So the Rebbe says a beautiful vart. When it comes to Birchas Hanenin, you're eating food, it's your choice to eat. So the person has one thing that's more ikir, and then there's something else that's more tafel. Like the halach is by Birchas Hananin, that there are things that, like let's say the Shivas Aminim have more chshivas, other foods have less chshivas. Or b'chlal, every individual could decide what's more chashiv. If there's something that you love more chaviv to the person, so that becomes more chashiv. Something else is less chashiv. So by Birchas Hananin, the concept of ikir and tafel plays a role in the bracha that you make. When it comes to a mitzvah, Rabbi Akiva's shitta is, by a mitzvah, there's no such a thing as ikir and tafel. Al tihi yeshiv v'sheikel b'mitzvah shel Torah. When it comes to mitzvahs, you can't weigh what's more important, what's less important. It's taka true that the Korban Pesach you must bring, and you don't necessarily have to bring the Korban Chagiga. If you have enough meat for the people, you don't even have to bring the Korban Chagiga. But when you do bring it, and you are fulfilling the mitzvah, once you have it, it becomes as ikir as the Korban Pesach. Because there's no such a thing as ikir and tafel b'negeya to mitzvahs. That's what Rabbi Akiva says, loy zu peterezu, v'loy zu peterezu. They're both the same ikir. And then the Rebbe goes a step deeper and says that from here we see, from this machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, you see the argument is two approaches b'negeya to mitzvahs b'chlal. And this is something that the Rebbe spoke about on many occasions in connecting to different things, that when you look at Torah and mitzvahs, there are two aspects to Torah and mitzvahs. On one hand, the Torah comes from the Eibishter. So the Torah is, you have to look at everything in Torah from the Eibishter's perspective. And from that perspective, every single mitzvah is the same choshev. There's no difference between one mitzvah and another. On the other hand, there's another aspect to mitzvahs. The Eibishter gives us the mitzvahs. The lashon of the Sikha is, there's the Naisen and there's the Mekabel. So you can look at Torah and mitzvahs mitzvah the Eibishter's perspective. From his perspective, all mitzvahs are equal. But Rabbi Shmuel says you have to look at the mitzvahs from our perspective. True, in mitzvah the shayrish, all mitzvahs are the same, but the Eibishter is giving the mitzvahs to us to fulfill the mitzvahs in the Olam Hazeh Gashmi on our level, the way we fulfill it here in this world. And on our level, there's one thing that's more ikir, and there's one thing that's more tafel. So mitzvah that, there is a chiluk between the Pesach and the Chagiga. So the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva is, do you look at it from the perspective of the Eibishter, mitzad gidrei hanaisen, or mitzad the mekabel? That's the basis of their machlokes according to this pshat of Rab Chaim Kohen here. Okay, let's go to the next piece of the Gemara, the last Indian, the conclusion. Rab Simloi ikla lepidyon haben. Rab Simloi found himself attending a pidyon haben. Bo minei. So the question was asked from Rab Simloi as follows. Pshita, this is obvious. Al pidyon haben. Regarding pidyon haben, what's the bracha that you make? Asheketshano b'mitzvaysav etzivanu al pidyon haben avi haben mevarich. So the father of the baby, which has the mitzvah to do the pidyon haben, so he's the one that makes this bracha of al pidyon haben. But baruch shechayanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lizman hazeh, this bracha of shechayanu, who makes the bracha? Kayim mevarich or avi haben mevarich? Does the kayim make this bracha, or does the father of the baby make the bracha? And the Gemara explains the suffix. Kayin mevarech. Does the Kayin make the bracha? The kamati hana liyadei. He's the one that's getting the 5 slime. He's getting the silver coins and he's making money here. So the hana, you make a bracha. The mitzvah, the bracha of shechayanu, you make when you have hana, like you had a peri chadash, a bayis chadash, a beget chadash. So over here he's getting money, so he should make a bracha for this. Oy, Avia ben Mevarech, the father of the baby makes the bracha, the Ka'avid mitzvah, because he's the one that's fulfilling a mitzvah. It's a unique mitzvah that comes once in a lifetime, or not even necessarily once in a lifetime. So this is a unique mitzvah, so he has to make the bracha. So that was the question that was asked from Rab Simloi. He didn't have the answer. Asa Shal Bei Medrasha, he came to the Beis Medrash and he asked the question. Amrulei, and they answered Rab Simloi, Avi haben mevarich shtayim. The father of the baby, he's the one that makes both brachas of Apidyon haben and also the bracha of Shechayonu. And the hilchase, this is the halacha, Avi haben mevarich shtayim. The father of the baby makes both brachas, the bracha of Shechayonu and the bracha of Apidyon haben. Hadron alach arve Pesachim, Meslikalach Masechta Pesachim. Okay, do we have a meaning over here in the room? We have a meaning, so you can say a Kaddish, but let me first say the Hadron, the Hadron alach, and then you can say a Kaddish. Hadron alach Masechta Pesachim, Hadron chalon, Daitan alach Masechta Pesachim, Daitan chalon, Lenis nashim minach Masechta Pesachim, Lenis nashim minon, Loi ba'ma dein, V'loi ba'ma dasi. If you mind passing me my hat, thank you. Hadron alach Masechta Pesachim, Hadron chalon, Daitan alach Masechta Pesachim, Daitan alach, Lenis nashim minach Masechta Pesachim, Lenis nashim minon, Loi ba'ma dein, V'loi ba'ma dasi. Hadron alach Masechta Pesachim, Hadron chalon, Daitan alach Masechta Pesachim, Daitan chalon, Lenis nashim minach Masechta Pesachim, Lenis nashim minon, Loi ba'ma dein, V'loi ba'ma dasi. Ratz b'fanach Hadron aleinu leviseinu shetehei Teirascha umanuseinu b'olam hazeh osehei manu leilam haba. Chanina ba papa, Rami ba papa, Nachman ba papa, Achoy ba papa, Abamari ba papa, Rafram ba papa, Rachash ba papa, Surcha ba papa, Ada ba papa, Dora ba papa. Harav nadner lenes divris rascha befinu befifiyas amcha beises rov, and here nachnu kolonet nachnu v'tzatzeinu v'tzatzoy amcha beises rov kolonu yedish mech olam diserasecha. Me oy v'techakmenu v'tzatzecha ki lo'olam hi li bisamim chukach laman le'evesh lo'olam le'ashkach b'chudecha ki vamchi yisani barach ato adinoi lavdeni chukecha. Amen, 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 selavad. Moidem nachnu lefanach adinoi le'enu le'veseinu shesamtech l'kenem yeshu b'sam medrash v'samtech l'kenem yeshu v'kronish anu mashkimim v'hei mashkimim l'divrei teira. V'hei mashkimim l'dvarim b'teilim, anu ma'melim v'hei ma'melim, anu ma'melim v'mekavlim schar, v'hei ma'melim v'heinem mekavlim schar, anu ratzim v'heim l'chai eilam haba, v'heim ratzim l'ber shachas shenema v'ata lehim taridin l'ber shachas an shidam emin v'yachzu yemem v'niaftach boch, yiratzim l'fanecha adinoi elahai, kishem shazatani l'sayim mesechta Pesachim, kein tazreini lahaschel mesechtes esfarim acherim u'lesaimam lulmad u'lamed lishma v'lasas l'kaim eskol divri tamu teresecha b'yava u'schus kol atanoim v'amiroim v'tamid chacham yamed li l'zarish l'tomish atayrim mipi u'mipizari v'zere zari adoilam v'tiskayim bi b'eshalechacha tancha isach b'shach b'cha tishmar alecha v'akitzois lahis tisichecha ki v'yir b'yamecha v'yisif l'cha shneschaim oirech yam b'minu b'smoyle shev'chaved adinoi oiz l'amiyitein adinoi yevarech es ami v'asholim. Amen.